Hey everyone, it's George from Blockchain DXB and today is the 24th of October 2022. Now I'm in the early morning hours in Dubai, so it might still be a weekend in most parts of the world. That is US, UK, Canada and quite a lot of other places. But the global cryptocurrency market is definitely not looking good at all. And surprisingly, even the volume of stable coins and DeFi is ridiculously bad. Now with midterm elections kicking up in the next few weeks, I really am not sure where the cryptocurrency market will be heading towards the final quarter of 2022. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about a multi-billionaire, that is Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX exchange, and he's focusing on censorship, and he's an advocate of censoring DeFi-related protocols. So we'll be talking about that, and we'll also be taking a jab at his political ally, that is, he had promised to spend millions to an extreme left-wing party, but unfortunately, looks like he has backed out. So we'll be very briefly exploring that. And the big question is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency supposed to be apolitical? Now, the intentions of Bitcoin and the way it was designed was that it is supposed to be apolitical, but politics and politicians do have a massive impact on the trajectory and direction of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So we'll be talking about that, and every month, I also tend to have a session where I discuss the political implications on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and vice versa. Now we'll also be discussing about the Web3 hype, particularly to do with India, and there's some really interesting report which is done by NASSCOM, and they happen to say that India is looking at $1.1 trillion worth of opportunity in Web 3.0. And in today's episode, guys, we'll also be talking about Tether USDT, and they have some massive news, and that is to do with Brazil. And the news is Tether USDT may soon be available in ATMs across all over in Brazil. So they are definitely banking the unbanking situation. Now regarding UAE, I have two news. And to be honest, the first news, I really am not sure what the actual news is, because they've advertised it as though it is an event. But once you try to research it, it looks like they're just accumulating all the events and they're just sharing all the information. So the first news is about Arabblockchainweek, and I'll be exploring that in detail. And the second news is I'm going to be explaining the pillars of open blockchain, because at the end of the day, I do think a lot of the cryptocurrency projects and a lot of people that I meet do fail to understand the very basics of Bitcoin and open blockchain. And the pillars of open blockchain is popularized by Andreas Antonopoulos. So what I would recommend you to do is go to YouTube. He has, if not one of the best YouTube videos explaining the pillars of open blockchain. So welcome everyone, it's 8 you're in Dubai and you're listening to Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi and Metaverse. And now this series of episodes in the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well. News that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other two news and information is related to Dubai, UAE and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi and Metaverse. This is followed by Ask Me Anything series, where you listeners can ask any questions from the cryptocurrency world. Now every Fridays, we have an episode called Metaverse Everything, where we solely focus on Metaverse. And last week, guys, I did have interviews with some of the key members from the Metaverse Standards Forum. So I'll be uploading that via my LinkedIn profile, so please check those out as well. Now going back to the Metaverse Everything podcast on Fridays, the format for Metaverse Everything podcast is completely different. And what I tend to do is I also tend to publish a daily and weekly report via my LinkedIn profile, so please follow me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is in the show notes below. But before we kickstart today's episode, I have an important message, so check this out. Firstly, guys, Startup OI is global one-tech platform for tech. It offers global high-paying tech jobs with flexibility in working time and location, global free tech events, and tech networks to connect with global like-minded engineers. A brilliant platform to listen to the tech experts in Metaverse and to grab their insights. Now listen, all you have to do is download the app Startup OI. If you're using an Android version, go to Google Store and App Store for iOS devices. Alternatively, you can also click on the show notes below to download Startup OI. Next, guys, listen, if you're into fitness, if you're into adventure, if you want to do something wild but still want to keep your health in check, there is a new podcast in town, a podcast focusing on obstacle course race in the Middle East. The podcast is called Rise in the Obstacle Course Race. And Rise in the Obstacle Course Race podcast is a peer-to-peer community-driven podcast where they talk all about obstacle course race in the Middle East, from Sandstorm to Spartan Race, from Tough Mudder to Desert Warrior Challenge, and also the Government Gov Games, and quite a lot more. The podcast has interviews with athletes locally and internationally to get inside scoop on how athletes prepare for obstacle course race. In the podcast, they also talk about interesting stories on why they are motivated to do obstacle course race. And that's not all. They also plan to release 7 NFTs. And these NFTs are no ordinary. These NFTs will represent every emirate in the UAE. And listen guys, these NFTs are going to be absolutely massive. So do one thing, go to Spotify, go to iTunes, go to any leading podcasting platform and search for Rise in the Obstacle Course Race podcast. And finally guys, not your keys, not your crypto. If you have dabbled with cryptocurrencies and now are seriously getting to protect your cryptocurrencies, there is no better way to protect it by using a hardware wallet. And this is where Ledger Wallet kicks in. And Ledger Wallets are hardware cryptocurrency wallets made by Ledger, a company headquartered in Paris, France. And Ledger's hardware wallets are multi-currency wallets that are used to store private keys for cryptocurrencies offline. And Ledger offers 2 hardware wallets, the Ledger Nano and Ledger Nano X wallets. They are world-class experts with extensive crypto security backgrounds. They continuously look for vulnerabilities in Ledger products in a constant effort to improve the level of security. Now, in today's world, securing these digital assets is a critical challenge, and this is where Ledger kicks in. So click the link below to buy your hardware wallet and support this podcast. It is a brilliant way to support this podcast. So what are you waiting for? The link is in the show notes below. Now, since we've taken care of that, let's look at the global cryptocurrency market. Now, surprisingly, the global cryptocurrency market is not doing good at all. But since the last few hours, the prices have actually pumped up because I tried to do the preparation for it a few hours ago and the numbers were ridiculously bad. But since the last 2 hours, it has increased. Now, the global crypto market as of 24th of October is $943 billion. And since the last 24 hours, it is up by 2.06%. The total crypto market volume over the last 24 hours is $41.91 billion, and this number was hovering around the $37 billion mark literally 2 hours ago. So it looks like in the last 2 hours, the cryptocurrency market volume has pumped up by well over $4 billion, and since the last 24 hours, it is up by a staggering 25.59%. The total volume in DeFi is once again ridiculously low and down to $2.45 billion. This, guys, was at $1.96 billion just a few hours ago. I really am not sure what is going on in the DeFi world. The total value locked in DeFi is $53.35 billion, and MakerDAO accounts for 14.66%, with $7.82 billion locked in MakerDAO protocol. And DeFi accounts for 5.85% of the total crypto market 24-hour volume. The volume of stablecoins is once again ridiculously low, down to $37.74 billion. Imagine, guys, the volume of all stablecoins is at $37.74 billion. Just a comparison which I keep repeating often on my podcast is when El Salvador made Bitcoin a legal tender, only the volume of Tether USDT that day alone was $186 billion. So from $186 billion, the volume of all stablecoins is down to $37.74 billion. That is ridiculously low. And out of this $37.74 billion, Tether USDT accounts for $30.72 billion. Now we have some positive news regarding Tether USDT, and the news is positive both for Tether as well as for Brazilians. And USDC accounts for $2.24 billion, and Binance USD is more than double of USDC, and it is at $5.34 billion. And the volume of stablecoins account for 90.04% of all the cryptocurrency market combined. So definitely not ideal. Now, just for this week, guys, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be discussing the numbers for non-fungible tokens as well. So if you look at the numbers for Flow, the market cap is at $1.57 billion. And surprisingly, since the last 24 hours, it is up by 3.6%. So it looks like NFTs are definitely making a comeback ApeCoin, the market cap is $1.45 billion, and since the last 24 hours it is up by 3.8%. And the Sandbox, the market cap is $1.14 billion, and since the last 24 hours it is up by 2.5%. Now guys, I'm going to quickly compare the market share, 24-hour trading volume, and the dominance between Bitcoin and Ethereum. Ethereum's market share is at $167 billion, and looks like the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin, so far as the market share is concerned, is only getting larger. Bitcoin's market share is at $375 billion. Now, during the merge era, Ethereum's market share was almost 50% of that of Bitcoin, but after the merge, the gap is definitely increasing and definitely not ideal for Ethereum. Now let's look at the 24-hour trading volume. Bitcoin's 24-hour trading volume is $21.4 billion, whereas Ethereum's 24-hour trading volume is down to $9.5 billion. And the dominance of Bitcoin is at 39.90%, whereas Ethereum's dominance has gone marginally down, and it is down by 17.70%. And what I think, guys, is going to be really interesting to see two reports that's going to be out on Monday. The first one will be by Glassnodes, because what they tend to do is every Mondays they provide a weekly insight that gives a snapshot on what has happened in the previous week. And CoinShares, they tend to provide a weekly snapshot, but it is rather compact and easier to understand, and they tend to publish it every Mondays via Medium. So what I'm going to be doing is, most likely on the episode that I published on Tuesday, I'm going to be explaining what happened last week. Now let's look at the smart contracting platform, and surprisingly, Ethereum since the last 24 hours is up, and it is currently at $167 billion. Binance BNB is also up, and it is up by $44.14 billion. Cardano is marginally up at $12.40 billion, but Solana has gone down. Now, I'm not sure if this is because of Sam Bankman-Fried's news, because there's a lot of debate between him and Eric Voorhees, who used to be a Bitcoin maximalist, and they are talking about censorship-resistant protocols, and I do have to agree with Eric Voorhees, but looks like Sam Bankman-Fried's centralized protocol, that is Solana, has once again taken a hit, and it is down by $10.48 billion, and Polkadot is also down at $6.92 billion. Now let's quickly look at the price of the king of all kings, that is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is currently at $19,548, and since the last 24 hours it is up by 1.78%, and since the last 7 days it is up by 1.53%. Ethereum is at $1,361, and since the last 24 hours it is up by 3.49%, and since the last 7 days it is up by 4.38%. Binance Coin or BNB is at $275, and since the last 24 hours it is up by 2.05%, and since the last 7 days it is up by 1.27%. And guys, these numbers, when I looked at it a few hours ago, they were all in red, so I really am not sure what has happened in the last 2 hours. And I'm looking at these price at 3:30 a.m. Gulf Standard Time. So when I tried to look at the price at around 1 o'clock in the morning, the prices were ridiculously bad. So really I'm not sure what happened between 1 a.m. Gulf Standard Time and 3:30 a.m. Gulf Standard Time. The market has moved quite a lot. Nonetheless, it's definitely good news for the cryptocurrency sector. Now in today's episode, guys, we are going to be talking about a multi-billionaire, an extreme left-leaning Sam Bankman-Fried. But before that, guys, I want you to ponder on this question. Is Bitcoin apolitical? Because by design, Bitcoin relies on cryptography, hashing algorithm, and mathematics. So to answer your question, Bitcoin in theory should be apolitical. And most of, or rather all cryptocurrency platforms should be apolitical. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Politicians and politics, and looks like multi-billionaires, can have a lot of say in the direction of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. Now, generally speaking, if you look at right-wing politicians or right-wing ideologies, they are in favor of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, freedom of speech, and open source. But left-leaning politicians and people who have left-leaning ideologies are not in favor of Bitcoin, are not in favor of freedom of speech, and definitely not in favor of open source. And multi-billionaire an extreme left-leaning Sam Bankman-Fried, who's the CEO of FTX exchange, has come under fire by the crypto community for comments that could imply that he is in favor of censoring DeFi protocols. And Decrypt has an article that states that Sam Bankman-Fried is pitching for sanctions, allowed lists, and blacklists in cryptos. So go to Decrypt and read through the article. Now, if you go to his Twitter account, he did share similar concerns via Twitter as well. He has put up a document that actually contains a draft of a set of standards that we as an industry needs to share, and that will, according to him, that would give clarity and protect customers while waiting for full federal regulatory regimes. Now, this is definitely not ideal in the cryptocurrency space, but multi-billionaires like Sam Bankman-Fried and left-leaning politicians can have a massive impact. You need to remember the entire protocol of FTX and the entire protocol of Solana does heavily depend on what Sam Bankman-Fried has to say. Now, it could be possible that he might even enforce such an action, and that's one of the reasons, guys, last week I did talk about why Bitcoin and open blockchain protocols do have severe allergic reactions to standard operating procedures, councils, associations, and quite a lot of other things. And Michael Saylor, he's a member of Bitcoin Mining Council, and I did talk about why that is not ideal, particularly when you talk about peer-to-peer technology. But if you're talking about, let's say, metaverse, or if you're talking about any other protocol, in those perspective and in those sense, having a standard is ideal. But when you're talking about peer-to-peer transactions, I don't think any standards are required. The reason being, these particular set of standards are linked to politics, and in Sam Bankman-Fried's case, he's extremely left-leaning. As a matter of fact, one of the mainstream medias in US, called as The Atlantic, they actually stated that Sam Bankman-Fried has spent millions in support of Joe Biden's presidential campaign and one of the biggest Democratic donors in the country in the lead up to this year's midterm election. And the article also states that the billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried isn't putting his money where his mouth is. So apparently, the people whom he has funded have lost in the midterm election so far. So he did promise to put up $1 billion more, but looks like he's backing down. Another left-leaning media is also bashing him, that is CNBC, and they have stated in an article that FTX's Sam Bankman-Fried backs down from the dumb quote about giving $1 billion to political races. That's one of the reasons, guys, why having standards associated to politics and politicians is not ideal for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And guys, while Sam Bankman-Fried is focusing on censoring transactions, it is so important to remember that the centralized blockchain protocol that he supports, that is Solana, has often stopped on multiple occasions. They have stopped producing blocks, and they did make a centralized decision. And when you talk about censoring transactions, the whole idea Bitcoin was created so that transaction is censorship resistant. And CoinDesk has an excellent article explaining crypto means absolutely nothing without censorship resistance. You may as well use your regular fiat currencies. And guys, because of this news, what I thought of doing is, in the UAE news, I thought of explaining the pillars of open blockchain. So when I'm discussing the pillars of open blockchain, I'm going to definitely link it to Sam Bankman-Fried's case. And if you're on Twitter, Eric Voorhees, who's if not one of the OGs of Bitcoin, he's having a lot of back and forth conversation with Sam Bankman-Fried, and the Bitcoin maximalists are definitely not approving this news. Now guys, let's talk about some news all the way from India. Now, is Web 3.0 a hype, or is it reality? Now look guys, personally I do think that Web 3.0 is everything about hype. There are very few cases where Web 3.0 actually merges with cryptocurrencies, and NASSCOM has published a report from India which states that India has emerged a leading global player in the Web3 market. And according to the report, Web3 investments in the country grew 37 times from October 2020 to Q1 of 2022, and over $1.1 trillion in Web3 economic value is projected to be added to India's GDP by 2032. So go through the article. The article is a bit interesting, and the article actually states that the number of Web3 startups in India as of the first half of this year was more than 450, and they have raised more than $1.3 billion since 2022. And the article states that the average deal size in 2021 was about $10 million, and there were more than 70 active institutional investors in the Indian Web3 space in 2021. Now, I know for a fact that one of the leading investors from Dubai, that is Cypher Capital, their team is also from India, or the CEO, one of the managing partners, is from India. So it looks like a lot of investments are coming from India, but I really am not sure if the protocols and the projects from India are truly Web 3.0. I'm pretty much sure that they think that they are Web 3.0. And listen, guys, I'm very active on LinkedIn, and in a day I get at least 10 personal messages. Out of that 10, I hate to say it, all 10 of them are from India, and they are trying to promote that they are building something on blockchain and Web 3.0. And by the message, you can tell they have absolutely no understanding of what blockchain protocol is and what the so-called Web 3.0 is. If you were to ask me personally, I do think Web 3.0 is all just hype. We had the ICO era, we had the DeFi era, we had the NFT hype, and now it looks like after Metaverse, it is the whole Web 3.0 hype. And guys, in my Metaverse Everything podcast, which I released 2 Fridays ago, I definitely did talk about Web 3.0, if it is reality, if it is hype, or if it is just bullshit. So what I really recommend you to do is check out that particular episode. And there are very few areas where the so-called Web 3.0 is actually linked to Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchain technology. Now guys, let's talk the news about Tether USDT. And the news is that Tether USDT will be available in over 24,000 ATMs across Brazil from 3rd of November onwards. Now they are doing this in partnership with SmartPay, and SmartPay's integration of USDT into its product will provide millions of people with the opportunity and access to digital currencies ecosystem and new financial revolution. But the big question is, this is available only via ATM, which means you still need to have your banking account. So I don't understand how does it solve the whole banking the unbanking problem. I have no idea, but looks like they're partnered with SmartPay. And if you read through the blog, they actually said that we are all making this movement for banking the unbanked. But the fact that it is linked to an ATM, which means you need to have a banking account. If you need to have a banking account, you need to do all your KYCs and quite a lot of other stuff. But still, nonetheless, great news if you're in Brazil. Rather than using local currency, you can use Tether USDT. Now guys, let's talk about 2 news regarding UAE. But before we move on to 2 crypto and blockchain news regarding UAE, I have 2 news regarding obstacle course race in UAE. The first news is about Spartan Race, and they have a massive event in December, the World Championship. And this is the second time they have the World Championship event in Abu Dhabi. And guys, I have a standalone episode with Spartan Race founder Joe Cena talking about Spartan Race NFT. And Sean, who's the Chief Technology Officer, was also in the podcast. And Calvin, who's one of the OGs in the NFT space, was at the podcast as well. So we discussed from a business point of view, why did Spartan Race decide to go ahead and launch its NFT, what were the challenges, and quite a lot more. So please check out those episodes. It is a standalone episode talking more about NFTs and not so much regarding Obstacle Course Race. And the second message is also about Obstacle Course Race and my favorite one, that is Tough Mudder. And listen guys, I'm on a mission to do my 100th Tough Mudder, so check both the messages now. The first message is from Spartan. Now Spartan is a global fitness brand with 10 million strong community. They create transformational events, experiences, products and content to help people, companies and team tear down boundaries and expand what they believe to be possible. From day one, nearly 2 decades ago, they've been champions of human transformation, and they live to help people get outside, eat healthy, and develop habits that lead to a life of constant progress. With families of brands, they push people from every corner of the globe outside the comfort zone and immerse them in a world of tough fitness and elite sports. Now they do this because you can face and overcome adversity head on and your potential is limitless. Now this year in December, in Abu Dhabi, the land of Gazelle, thousands of athletes and spectators will gather at the metropolis in the desert to compete for Spartan immortality. This is a unique opportunity to watch the world's best obstacle course race athletes compete for world championship and have your group conquer the course themselves. The massive event takes place from the 2nd till the 4th of December this year. Now for Spartan World Championship, The ticket details and registration to the programs are mentioned in the links below. Now, if you're into running, if you are into adventure, and if you are in UAE, you definitely need to check this out. And the second news, guys, is about Tough Mudder. Now listen, guys, there are three things that I'm extremely passionate about. All three of them have some kind of similarity. That is heavy metal, Bitcoin, and obstacle course race. Now we've looked at the premier obstacle course race event, that is Spartan Race, which is taking place between the 2nd and 4th of December. But the next one that I'd like to discuss is Tough Mudder. Now Tough Mudder is unique, and I did my very first obstacle course race, that was Tough Mudder. And Tough Mudder obstacles are more fun, more adventurous, and it involves a lot of teamwork. And you can also use my promo code, which is George25, for a 25% discount. Now if you are into running, if you are into adventure, if you are into obstacle course race, you definitely need to sign up for this event. So go to the website toughmudderarabia.com, and you can also follow them on Instagram. The Instagram handle is toughmudderarabia. Now guys, since you've taken care of that, let's look at two news from UAE. And the first news is called Arabblockchainweek, and they claim to be a one-stop for all Web3 events happening in the Arab world. Now let me go ahead and explain what this news is all about, because initially when I read through the news, it looked like they are planning to have an event between November 11th to 18th, but unfortunately it looks like they are not having an event, but it is kind of like an aggregation, a combination of all the events taking place in the Arab world between 11th of November till the 18th of November. So the website is Arabblockchainweek.com. And unfortunately, guys, when you go to the website, it does say there is a section to check on past events and past speakers, but when you click on it, you just do not get anything. And if you click on the team, it just has 3 members. In that particular website, that is Arabblockchainweek.com, they do have upcoming events which are taking place in Egypt, Bahrain, Oman, Jordan, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. Now, unfortunately, I could not see any events in UAE. Now, I'm pretty much sure UAE has a massive role to play in the Arab world. They should have had loads of events from Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and UAE, but I'm really not sure where they're getting the news from. What I do think that this particular website, that is Arabblockchainweek.com, might just be a platform to list all the events. I'm not sure why that is the case, because you already have eventbrite.com and you already have meetup.com. Now, as long as they are not charging anything for listing the events, then looks like it may be a good idea. But other than that, I don't think so why this news should be made in a leading publication called Zavia. As per the website, it says that Arab Blockchain Week is a decentralized community organized initiative, and they have given 4 reasons to join the Arab Blockchain Week, that is networking, learning, lead generation, and exposure. And as per the website, it says Arab Blockchain Week is committed to being blockchain agnostic and focusing on education to push mass adoption by providing first-hand information about the industry. And they've also mentioned that please keep it educational, try to be cost-friendly for the community as much as you can, respect other events, and minimize overlap and create a welcoming and inclusive environment so interested parties at any knowledge level feel comfortable to join. So it looks like, guys, they are just asking other events to mention the events that they have on the platform. That's what I can think of. And they've also mentioned that the whole goal is for people to understand, experiment, and network. But the reason why I thought I'll go ahead and explain this news is so that we are at least aware of what is going on in the Bitcoin and blockchain world. Now, it is a bit surprising that they do not have any events from Dubai and UAE, considering the fact that the website is Arab Blockchain Week. Now, guys, let's talk about the second news. The reason why I wanted to have this news is because of the whole Sam Bankman-Fried news, where he wants to focusing on censoring transactions. So the second news for today is Pillars of Open Blockchains. I'm going to be explaining what the Pillars of Open Blockchain are. Now, this terminology, called as Pillars of Open Blockchain, is popularized by Andreas Antonopoulos. Now listen, guys, go to YouTube, look out for Andreas Antonopoulos. He has an excellent video explaining the Pillars of Open Blockchain. So most of the points that I'm going to be talking here is from that video. Now, he has mentioned 5 points, but later on he added a 6th point as well. So I'll be explaining each and every point in details. So the first one is open source. When you talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, you need to make sure that your code is completely open, and you can check these code at github.com. Now, surprisingly, guys, and it might be a shocker, that GitHub is currently owned by Microsoft. And when Microsoft actually purchased github.com, there was a massive movement to switch all the codes from github.com to Gitcoin. So I'm not sure what the status of that is. But anyways, going back to open source, when you talk about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, metaverse, or anything to do with open blockchain or open source, your code needs to be completely open. Anyone can check it without taking any permissions. Not only the code, even the transactions should be checked completely open source. And that is one thing which I'll be talking about later on. The second one is permissionless. When you talk about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, or any open blockchain protocol, you do not need any permissions, which means there is no need for KYC as well. The third one is censorship resistant, and this is where Sam Bankman-Fried says the transactions needs to be censored. Listen guys, when you talk about Bitcoin and open blockchain and cryptocurrencies, transactions cannot be censored and should not be censored, but currently with Ethereum, what is going on right now is more than 50% of the transactions are or can be censored. So this is something which I'll try to cover most likely when we're having the Ethereum beginners guide session, because a lot of people in the Bitcoin community and even in the Ethereum community is not happy about it as well. And this has happened because of the drama of Tornado Cash. And guys, listen, regarding Tornado Cash, I do have an excellent episode with Anish, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Panther Protocol, where we explore what went wrong with Tornado Cash. And he's if not one of the OGs in the cryptocurrency space. He's an OG so far as cryptography is concerned, and he did share some really interesting points, so check those episodes out as well. And when you talk about censorship resistant, one thing you need to know is when the miners update their transactions, their role is only to update the transaction, not to validate these transactions. So that is a key differentiation. So miners' role is only to update the transaction. Now in the backend, they only check if the private key matches the public address or private key matches the public key which matches the public address. Other than that, they should not be having any right in declining any transactions. And that is something that Sam Bankman-Fried is trying to derive standards for. So definitely not ideal in the blockchain space, but it may be ideal in the fiat economy, which is controlled by a central entity. But in an open blockchain, that is an absolutely big no. The fourth point is borderless. When you talk about Bitcoin and open cryptocurrencies, the transactions can be made absolutely in any part of the world. As a matter of fact, they've also done transactions in space. So Blockstream, which manages most of the protocol of Bitcoin, they did a transaction in space. And if you go to the website, they also have ways how you can do transactions just by sending radio signals as well. But going back to the point of borderless, when you talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, the transactions can happen absolutely from any part in the world, which means it can also surpass sanctions, and countries being sanctions can still be in a position to use an open blockchain protocol. And the fifth point, guys, is neutral. It literally means the value of using Bitcoin or open blockchain is the same. So a person in Afghanistan can use Bitcoin the same way as a person in first world country, let's say like US, or someone in Iran or someone in UAE. So doing a transaction is completely neutral all over the world, and pretty soon maybe in space as well. And the sixth point, which Andreas Antonopoulos added later on, is publicly verifiable. Now, all transactions in Bitcoin and open source protocols are completely verifiable by absolutely anyone. Even if you have a 5-year-old kid, he or she should be in a position to verify these transactions as well. And last week I did talk about one of the protocols, I believe it was from Dubai, where in order to verify the transactions, you needed the username and password. So that is once again a massive no so far as open blockchain is concerned. But in case of central bank digital currencies, it's perfectly fine. Now guys, listen, when we talk about open blockchain protocol, it's not to say that they are absolutely best. Now, Bitcoin and open blockchain have relatively very few cases. And if you were to compare it with existing systems, current existing systems are better. And I'm quickly going to share some basic level differentiation between open blockchain and centralized blockchain. So the first one is in open blockchain, the source code is completely open source. In case of permission blockchain or centralized protocols, the source code is not open. The source code is often protected. Open blockchain or Bitcoin protocols are permissionless. In case of current existing systems or centralized protocols, you require KYC. You need to follow local laws and jurisdiction, so essentially you need permission. Open blockchain protocols are censorship resistant, but in case of centralized protocols or like Solana or fiat current systems, the transactions can be censored and you need to follow guidelines of AML, FATF, and quite a lot more. Open blockchain and Bitcoin protocols are completely borderless. In case of current existing systems or fiat systems, they are restricted. You have sanctions, you have regional laws, you need to follow those things. When you talk about open blockchain, it is neutral, which means the value of using currency is the same. In case of current existing systems, that's not the case. A classic example I can think of is doing transactions between El Salvador to America. It takes maybe 21 days, sometimes even longer. In case of Bitcoin and open blockchain, the transactions are completely neutral. But in case of current existing systems, the experience of doing transactions is not the same between two countries, maybe even between few regions as well. And the final point, all open blockchain protocols or Bitcoin is publicly verifiable, but in case of current existing systems, or even in case of central bank digital currencies, only chosen officials will be in a position to see these transactions and validate these transactions. And guys, one misconception people have is people think that blockchain is the holy grail of freedom. That is not true. To be honest, blockchain has very limited use case. One thing which I can think of is when we talk about Bitcoin and open blockchain, the element of trust is completely removed. So it is a trustless system. Whereas in case of existing systems, you need to trust a central entity. So let me quickly explain the key differences in terms of time, cost, and quality. When you talk about open blockchain, they are extremely slow, and you have to rely on second layer protocol, and that usually has certain elements of centralization. Whereas in current existing systems, let's say like Facebook or banking transactions, the transactions are extremely fast. If you look at Visa transactions and compared to, let's say, Bitcoin, the transactions in Visa are ridiculously fast. Think of Facebook, for instance, how easy it is and how quick it is to go and send you messages. Or let's say Instagram, it's extremely easy, but they are extremely centralized, and decentralized entities can block you at any point of time for political views, and they often make money on the advertisements and promotions. But when you talk about cost, open blockchain are extremely expensive. Now there are certain cases where when you talk about Bitcoin, billions of dollars has been sent for ridiculously smaller amount of fees. But if you look at, let's say, Ethereum blockchain, if you talk about the gas fees, those are ridiculously high. And if you look at Ethereum gas fee at one point of time was $280. So imagine doing an Ethereum transaction for, let's say, $100. The fee would be $280. Now all these fees have drastically gone down, but the gas fees can be fluctuating and it could be worrisome sometimes. Now I'm saying this point in comparison to, let's say, existing systems. Often, if you look at banking systems, now transactions are completely free of cost. I know for a fact that from India to Dubai, all of the remittances are completely free. And on top of that, they also offer you insurance, they offer you safety, and they offer you chargebacks as well. In case of open blockchain and cryptocurrencies, there are no chargebacks as well. Now the third point that I want to discuss, and this is basic, when you talk about quality, open blockchain and cryptocurrencies have a terrible user experience. You still need to rely on private key, public address, and currently there are still no apps or dApps. It still works on websites. In case of current existing system, let's say like your banking system, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, the user experience is absolutely excellent, which makes it such an easy onboard process. And when you talk about updates, an update in centralized protocol or permission blockchain can literally happen overnight. But in case of an open blockchain, the update would take months, if not years. The last update that took place in Bitcoin, where they changed ECDSA to Taproot as no signature, the decision making and the actual use case took well over 18 months. In case of a current existing system or centralized protocol, that decision and the update could literally happen overnight. And guys, when you talk about open blockchain, you always need to remember the blockchain trilemma problem, and that is a problem which is currently in the industry. And the blockchain trilemma problem is scalability, security, and decentralization. And I have to tell you guys, there have been so many projects that I see that they promise to have infinite transactions. They tend to compromise either on security or they are extremely centralized. There are a couple of projects which say that we are 100% distributed, but in that case, they tend to compromise on security and scalability. So solving a blockchain trilemma is a massive problem. Anyone who says that, we offer X number of scalable solutions, they are making a heavy compromisation. So far as decentralization is concerned and so far as security is concerned, if you look at Ethereum, they can solve quite a lot of problems. But if you look at the number of transactions that are taking place right now in Ethereum, over 50% of that are complying with OFAC. So when I have my Ethereum beginner's guide, I'm definitely going to be talking about that. And to be honest, guys, that is definitely not ideal for Ethereum at a macro level. So that's all for today, guys, on the Crypto and Coffee Date from Blockchain DXB. In case you guys have any feedback or suggestions, please drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com and check out my website www.blockchaindxb.com and check out my other website that is area2071.com that talks everything about Metaverse. And if you like listening to this podcast, please click on the follow button, give it a 5-star rating, and share the word across. Now, for the next few minutes, guys, there's going to be an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions regarding Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. So let's kick start with the Ask Me Anything series. Hey everyone, it's George from Blockchain DXB. You're listening to the Ask Me Anything series, where you listeners can ask any questions from Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And remember, Monday to Thursdays, 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover job news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes into Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well, news that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other two news and information is related to Dubai, UAE, and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And what you're listening to right now is the Ask Me Anything series, where you listeners can ask any questions from the cryptocurrency world. I have a question by Raleigh who asks, what do you think of HBAR? And they have been making so many partnerships lately. Raleigh, this is an excellent question. When you talk about HBAR or Hedera Hashgraph, personally, I am not a massive fan, but I do see tremendous use case of Hedera Hashgraph. Now, one thing you need to remember, Raleigh, is when you talk about Hedera Hashgraph and its native token, that is HBAR, they do not follow blockchain protocol. They work under a completely different consensus system, and it just might be better than blockchain technology as well. In case of blockchain technology, there are blocks that are chained to the next block, and that's how the immutability works. But in case of Hedera Hashgraph, the consensus layer works completely different. They work on something called as gossip protocol. So essentially, one node sends a message to another node, the other node then sends a message to another, and that's how the entire protocol works. It'll be really hard for me to explain that now. But that being said, they do offer a similar security feature as well. So when you talk about the immutability, they definitely tackle the same immutability of Bitcoin and open blockchain. The biggest problem is they are patented, which means there's a very high degree of centralization that does actually exist. If you are a Hedera Hashgraph fan, and if you are someone who's working from the Hedera Hashgraph industry or associated, you will 100% disagree. You would say that, we are still fairly decentralized in comparison, let's say, to other protocols. And a part of me does agree to what they are saying. But if you were to talk about it in a strict way, I do feel that Hedera Hashgraph does compromise on one of the blockchain trilemma problem, that is decentralization or distributed, how we like to call it. The fact that, the entire work is patented, which means there is a central entity. There is a central entity, a central institution, which just means that in order to use Hedera Hashgraph, there's a patent which is involved, and this is an absolute massive big no. And one thing, Raleigh, you need to understand, having beyond blockchain protocols such as Hedera Hashgraph is not a bad thing. There are brilliant use cases for Hedera Hashgraph as well. And I do remember listening to one of the interviews with the founders of Hedera Hashgraph, and they did give very right reasoning in terms of what they plan to do. So their whole idea is they started off as centralized projects, and gradually they want to move towards decentralization and distributed. And why particularly like that? And if you look at Bitcoin, that also started off as an extremely centralized way. I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto, he did make a lot of the transactions, a lot of the decision making by himself without even consulting quite a lot of other people. So if you do want to find out some interesting information about the earlier days of Satoshi Nakamoto, there is a guy called Patoshi, which starts with a P. He has a series of episodes explaining what Satoshi Nakamoto did right and what he did wrong. And he actually says that Satoshi Nakamoto, in the initial stages, did make a lot of centralized decisions. But to answer your question, Harali, personally, I'm not a fan of Hedera Hashgraph or HBAR, but they definitely do have some brilliant use case. Now, I could be wrong in saying that, they do have relatively fewer number of so-called miners or block producers or validators. And I think it's the Hedera Hashgraph Association that decides who can be a part of it and who cannot be a part of that. But again, please don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But personally, I'm not a fan of Hedera Hashgraph. I think Bitcoin and open blockchain is something completely different. And to be honest, Raleigh, beyond blockchain protocols and most of the cryptocurrency projects, they often compromise on scalability, security, or decentralization. So it's really critical, Raleigh, to truly understand the blockchain trilemma problem. And that's where I don't think Hedera Hashgraph does a good job. They often compromise on one of those things, that is either scalability, either security, or decentralization, or distributed, how I like to call it. So that's all for today, guys, on the Ask Me Anything series from Blockchain DXB. In case if you have any feedback or suggestions, please drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com and check out my website www.blockchaindxb.com. And guys, check out my other website area2071.com that talks everything about Metaverse. And if you like listening to this podcast, please click on the follow button, give it a 5-star rating, and share the word across. And remember, guys, Monday to Thursdays, 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes in the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well, news that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other two news and information is related to Dubai, UAE, and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And this is followed by Ask Me Anything series that we're listening to right now, where you listeners can ask any questions regarding Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.